AITA for refusing to invite my stepbrother to my wedding after he made a huge scene at my engagement party. I, 28F, have been with my fiancé, Matt, 30M, for 6 years. We met in college and have been inseparable ever since. Matt comes from a very tight-knit family, and I've always been warmly welcomed despite not being related by blood. That said, Matt's family has its quirks, and I've learned to navigate them over the years. One of the biggest challenges has been Matt's younger half-brother, Eric, 23M. Matt and Eric share dad, but they were raised in very different households. Eric's father remarried when Eric was a toddler, and he has a blended family that he's extremely close with. Matt and Eric, while friendly, are not particularly close. Eric has a reputation for being entitled and dramatic, and I've personally witnessed him throw tantrums over relatively minor things, like not getting a front row seat at a concert or missing out on a limited edition sneaker drop. Fast forward to last year. Matt proposed, and I couldn't have been happier. We decided to host an engagement party to celebrate with our families and closest friends. Everything was going well until Eric showed up. I had met him a handful of times before, and while I wouldn't call him unpleasant, he always seemed self-centered and dismissive toward me. At the party, I had spent weeks coordinating decorations, catering, and seating arrangements. I want to make it special for everyone, including Matt's family. Eric arrived late, and I greeted him politely, but he immediately started complaining about the food and the music. I tried to ignore it, hoping he'd settle down, but that didn't happen. He loudly criticized the seating chart, claiming his friends needed better spots and demanding to move tables around. When Matt politely explained that the seating was already set, Eric stormed over to the dessert table and began taking excessive amounts of food, insisting he was just testing quality control. I was mortified, and many of our guests were staring, whispering, and some even filming on their phones. The tipping point came during a toast Matt's sister gave. She spoke about family, love, and celebrating this milestone together. Eric, apparently offended that the toast didn't center him, interrupted loudly, declaring that no one ever appreciates him in this family, and that he was the most talented person here who's constantly overlooked. He then tried to grab the microphone from Matt's sister, who was understandably flustered, and stormed out after knocking over a decorative centerpiece. I was in shock. Matt was furious, but he tried to salvage the evening, apologizing to our guests and attempting to smooth things over. It took hours for the mood to recover, and I was so embarrassed that I couldn't even enjoy my own engagement party. That night, Eric texted Matt saying he didn't mean to ruin the party, but also implying that he felt slighted because no one had asked for his opinion about anything. After that, Matt and I had a long discussion. Matt admitted that Eric could be difficult, but felt like completely cutting him off from the wedding might be extreme. I disagreed. I explained that inviting someone who had publicly humiliated us and caused guest discomfort seemed unnecessary. Matt was torn because he doesn't want to create tension with his father, who would probably pressure us to include Eric. We tried compromise for a while, thinking about maybe inviting Eric but setting boundaries or assigning him a role to keep him occupied. Matt's father, however, went behind our backs and mentioned to Eric that he would be welcomed at the wedding. Eric immediately began sending long messages to me, some apologetic, but many more implying that I was ungrateful and controlling for not wanting him there. The situation escalated when Matt and I officially announced the guest list to our families. Matt told his father that Eric wouldn't be attending, citing the engagement party incident as the main reason. His father called Matt, upset and accusing us of being too harsh and not valuing family. Eric, of course, found out through family gossip and started a group text where he berated both of us, called me manipulative, and claimed he would expose the wedding as a disaster if he isn't invited. Matt and I have since been stuck in a weird limbo. Matt still loves his brother, but agrees that the engagement party behavior was unacceptable. We've considered family therapy or mediated discussions, but Eric refuses anything that doesn't center on him being right. My friends say I'm absolutely justified in wanting to protect my day, but Matt's family insists I'm being too rigid and ruining the chance for a family reconciliation. To make matters worse, Eric has been sending cryptic messages to our wedding vendors, claiming he has rights to influence wedding plans. Some vendors have contacted us, confused and worried about possible disruptions. We are now on edge, constantly checking emails and texts, worried that Eric might actually try to sabotage the wedding. I feel like I'm being reasonable. This is my wedding, my celebration, and I should not have to tolerate someone who's proven to be disruptive, humiliating, and manipulative. Matt wants peace in his family, but I can't compromise my comfort and sanity. At the same time, I worry that our decision could permanently damage Matt's relationship with his father and Eric. AITA for refusing to invite Eric after the engagement party incident? Or am I being unfair by prioritizing my comfort over family unity? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for confronting my sister at my wedding over a childhood incident she insists I forgot. So I, 29F, recently got married to my partner, Mark, 32M, and overall, the wedding was amazing. Friends, family, beautiful venue, the works. But there's this lingering tension with my sister, Lily, 27F, that I didn't anticipate would blow up at my wedding. I'm still trying to figure out if I was wrong to confront her in front of everyone. Some context. Lily and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, our parents were not great at handling sibling conflicts. They favored me in some ways, Lily in others, and as kids, we learned to compete for attention rather than support each other. One incident from when I was 12 still haunts me, and I honestly thought Lily remembered it. When I was 12, I had a small party for my birthday at home. It was nothing huge, just a few friends and family. Lily and I were supposed to share the cake cutting since our birthdays are a month apart, and my parents wanted to teach us to share the spotlight. Anyway, during the party, Lily accidentally, or maybe on purpose, I still can't tell, tripped me near the staircase. I hit my head pretty hard, and I had a mild concussion. I don't remember exactly how severe it was at the moment, but I was dizzy and crying, and my parents were panicked. Here's the thing. Lily laughed about it afterward and said I was overreacting, and the adults didn't seem to take it seriously. I was embarrassed and hurt, and that moment stuck with me because it was the first time I really felt betrayed by someone who was supposed to be my sister. I mentioned it a few times as a kid, but Lily always shrugged it off, saying she didn't remember it, and eventually I just stopped bringing it up because it was exhausting to argue with her. Fast forward to last weekend, my wedding. Everything was perfect until the reception. I had a few words to say to my bridesmaids before we started taking photos, and Lily came up to me. She was acting a little distant, which was weird because she had seemed fine during the ceremony. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said she was fine, but looked uncomfortable. Then she made a comment to the room in front of a few guests about how she couldn't believe I still cared about something from when we were kids, and laughed it off. I immediately knew she was talking about the incident with the staircase. My stomach sank. I didn't want to ruin the day, but I couldn't let it slide either. I asked her to step outside with me. She rolled her eyes but followed. Once we were outside, I told her exactly how I felt, that I'd been hurt physically and emotionally, that it had scarred me, and that it bothered me that she brushed it off as nothing. She got defensive and said, "I honestly don't remember doing that. You probably fell yourself. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I told her that whether she remembered it or not didn't matter. What mattered was the effect it had on me and the fact that she never acknowledged it. Here's where it escalated. She started shouting at me, saying I was embarrassing her in my own wedding and always trying to turn everything into a personal attack. I lost my temper because I felt like my trauma was being dismissed, and I yelled back that she had a responsibility as my sister to recognize what she did and that my feelings were valid, whether she liked it or not. At this point, a few guests outside were watching, but I didn't notice until later. She stormed back into the reception, and I stayed outside for a bit to calm down. Later, Mark told me some of the older relatives were upset that I had confronted her in front of people, and a few guests mentioned they thought it was inappropriate for a wedding day fight. Lily hasn't spoken to me since, and my parents are caught in the middle. My mom said she wishes I had handled it privately, and my dad basically told me to let it go. Honestly, I feel like I was standing up for myself, and this wasn't about ruining anyone's wedding. It was about not letting her trivialize something that caused me real pain. But now, I'm questioning whether I should have waited until after the honeymoon or handled it differently. I can't stop replaying the conversation in my head and wondering if I overreacted. So Reddit, AITA for confronting my sister at my wedding over something from our childhood that she insists I forgot. AITA for refusing to let my cousin and her kids stay in my new house, even though she claims family should always help family. 32F, recently bought a house in a city I've lived in for over a decade. It's a modest but comfortable home that I saved up for years to afford. I live alone, and for me, this house represents independence, stability, and a personal sanctuary. I've always enjoyed hosting small gatherings, but I also value my privacy and the ability to control my own space. My cousin, Rachel, 35F, has been going through a rough patch for the past couple of years. She recently separated from her husband and is now raising her 3 kids, ages 4, 7, and 10, mostly on her own. I've tried to support her emotionally and even financially on small occasions, like helping with groceries or babysitting for a few hours, but I have my limits. A few weeks ago, Rachel called me out of the blue and asked if she and her kids could move in with me temporarily. She framed it as a short-term arrangement until she got back on her feet, which she claimed would be a few months. She insisted that it would be a win-win. The kids would have stability, and she wouldn't have to stress about rent while she figured out her next steps. I hesitated immediately. My house is not that big. It's a 2-bedroom with a small living area. There's barely enough room for me to live comfortably, let alone accommodate 3 energetic kids plus a parent. Additionally, I work from home, and my space doubles as an office, which requires peace and quiet. I explained this to Rachel gently, saying that I couldn't host her and her kids long-term because I need my space and routine. I offered to help her look for affordable rentals or even assist in temporary daycare or childcare so she could manage while she stabilized her situation. Rachel's reaction was intense. She accused me of being selfish and cold. She said, "I can't believe you wouldn't help family in need. You're supposed to be the responsible one in the family. How can you just leave me to struggle when I have nowhere else to go?" She even hinted that other relatives might judge me for not stepping up. I tried to clarify that I do care about her and the kids, and that my refusal wasn't personal. It's about capacity and boundaries. I reminded her that temporarily could turn into months, maybe even longer, and that I can't jeopardize my mental health or professional life. I also pointed out that having her and her kids in my house without a clear plan could create tension, mess, and stress that could damage our relationship in the long run. Rachel then sent me a long text detailing all the reasons I should help her. She's family. She has no other place to go. I'm financially stable, and she claims I owe it to the kids. She framed it as if refusing would make me a villain in the family narrative. My parents and some relatives got involved after hearing her side, suggesting I should open my home for family in need, and implying that I was heartless if I didn't. I stuck to my boundaries. I said I could help with short-term solutions like babysitting a couple of nights a week, contributing to rent for a place she could rent, helping her organize finances, or connecting her with community resources. I also reminded her that moving in with someone is a huge adjustment, especially with children, and it could create resentment or stress for everyone. This led to a week-long silent treatment from Rachel, and she has since been posting subtle comments on social media about family loyalty and people who only care about themselves. Some relatives have called me to ask why I wouldn't help family in need, and others have privately told me they agree with me, but are staying out of the drama. I am honestly conflicted. On one hand, I want to help my cousin and her children because I love them and want them to be safe. On the other hand, I can't compromise my home, my mental health, and my work life for an indefinite stay that I know will be stressful. I feel like I'm being responsible and setting necessary boundaries, but the social and emotional pressure is intense. I've also considered the long-term implications. If I let them stay, It might create a precedent where other family members assume my home is available whenever they have trouble. I've been trying to balance compassion with practicality, but the guilt is weighing heavily. Rachel insists that I'm choosing comfort over family, and now some relatives are subtly siding with her. I don't want to ruin my relationship with her or the kids. I've tried to offer compromise solutions and even temporary assistance outside of living arrangements. I made it clear I care about her and will support her in practical ways, but she interprets this as me being selfish. The tension in the family is growing, and I'm unsure if I'm being unreasonable or if my boundaries are justified. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin and her 3 kids stay in my new house, even though she claims family should always help family. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after he caused a huge argument at our family gathering. So, some background. I, 32F, have a sister, Emily, 30F, who has been dating her fiancé, Mark, 31M, for about 3 years. Emily and I have always been close, but Mark has always rubbed me the wrong way. I can't exactly put my finger on why. I try not to be judgmental, but he tends to be condescending toward people in a very subtle way, often masked as jokes. Everyone else seems to brush it off, but it's gotten worse over time. Anyway, the story starts a few months ago. Emily and Mark got engaged, and she was over the moon, of course. Our parents are very excited too, and there's been a lot of planning for the wedding. I've tried to be supportive, even though I feel uneasy about Mark. Fast forward to last weekend. My parents were out of town, and I had offered to host a small pre-wedding family gathering in my apartment because it's spacious and I love to cook. Emily insisted on bringing Mark, which I was hesitant about, but I didn't want to start drama, so I agreed. The day of the gathering, I'd spent hours preparing food and organizing everything. I was excited for a relaxed, fun day. When they arrived, everything seemed fine at first. But about an hour in, Mark started making these snide remarks about my apartment, my cooking, and even my choice of wine. He made a joke about my tiny kitchen being suitable for someone who clearly doesn't cook for a family of 5, even though I had made enough food for everyone. I laughed awkwardly at first, hoping he'd move on, but he didn't. The comments kept coming, and I started to feel really uncomfortable. Emily, surprisingly, didn't defend me. She laughed along with some of his comments, though I could tell she was trying to play it off. The other family members were quiet, probably not wanting to create tension. Finally, I told Mark directly that his comments were rude and unnecessary. He just smirked and said I was too sensitive and that I needed to learn how to take a joke. Things escalated when he noticed a family photo of my late grandmother. He made a comment about it being creepy and said something like, "You really keep this around?" Weird, kind of morbid. I felt my blood boil at this point. I told him that his comment was completely inappropriate, especially in front of family. He shrugged it off and continued to make offhand remarks during dinner, subtly criticizing my food, my furniture, and even my cat. After the gathering, Emily and Mark left, and I spent the evening stewing in anger. I felt disrespected and embarrassed in front of my family. I called Emily the next day to talk about it. I calmly explained that Mark's behavior was unacceptable, and I didn't want him at my home again. I tried to emphasize that I wasn't trying to be hostile, just that my home is a place where I should feel safe and respected. Emily didn't take it well. She accused me of being unreasonable and jealous of her relationship. She said that Mark is just joking around and that I was overreacting. I told her it's not jealousy. It's about basic respect. She said she couldn't believe I would shut her fiancé out of family events just because I don't like him. Our conversation ended with her saying she'd talk to our parents, which made me even more anxious. The next day, our parents called. They were upset, saying that I was overreacting and that family gatherings are about everyone feeling welcome. I explained my perspective again, emphasizing that Mark's behavior was insulting and that I have the right to say who is allowed in my home. My mom told me I was being too rigid and that I should try to get along with him for Emily's sake. I reminded her that I don't dislike him because of personality differences. I dislike him because of how he treats people. My dad said I needed to pick my battles, implying that I should let this one go. I haven't seen Emily since, and she's been posting on social media about how family drama is ruining the wedding vibes. She tagged our parents and made it clear that she thinks I'm in the wrong. A few of our relatives have subtly implied that I'm being difficult, and even some of my friends are unsure if I'm in the wrong because it's her fiancé. After all, honestly, I feel like I did the right thing. I have the right to feel safe and respected in my own home, and Mark's behavior crossed several lines. I wasn't rude or aggressive. I set a boundary. But now, my family is making me feel guilty, and Emily is distant. I'm worried this could permanently damage our relationship, but I also feel like bending to Mark's behavior would compromise my self-respect. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after he caused a huge argument and disrespected me in front of our family? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house during his extended visit, even though everyone says I'm being unreasonable. So a bit of background first. I, 28F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I moved here about 5 years ago for work, and I absolutely love it. It's a cozy space, and I've made it my sanctuary. I live alone, and I honestly enjoy the peace and quiet that comes with it. I'm not an extremely social person, so having my own space is very important to me. My sister, Emma, 30F, has always been a bit more free-spirited, and she's been dating her fiancé, Tom, 32M, for about 3 years. They got engaged last year, and the wedding is planned for next summer. About 2 months ago, Emma called me, out of the blue, saying that Tom had a sudden work transfer to the city I live in. She said it was supposed to be temporary, like 2 months, but now she's hinting that it might stretch longer depending on his project. She asked if it would be okay if he stayed at my place for the duration because they hadn't found a place yet, and it would make life so much easier. I was taken aback. I've never lived with anyone besides roommates in college, and even then, it was chaos. I don't mind my sister, but Tom? I barely know the guy beyond dinners and family gatherings. My first reaction was to say, I don't think that's a good idea, but Emma pushed, saying it would be temporary, and besides, he was a nice guy. I said I'd think about it. A few days later, I told her the truth. My apartment is small, I work long hours, and I genuinely need my space. I suggested she could help him find an Airbnb or a short-term rental until he could sort out something permanent. Emma got upset and said I was being selfish. She kept saying things like, he's your family too, and it's just for a couple of months. What's the big deal? I tried to explain that having a guest in my apartment is very different from visiting for a weekend. It's my home. I like having my routines, my privacy, and not having to navigate someone else's habits. She said I was overreacting and that if I cared about her and her fiancé, I would let him stay. I decided to stick to my guns. I offered to help him find temporary housing, but I drew a hard line. He would not be staying at my place. That's when the situation escalated. Emma sent me a long text saying she felt betrayed and disappointed in me. She said I was being mean and didn't care about family. Tom apparently called me too, which I didn't answer, and left a voicemail that was very polite, but hinted he was upset that I wouldn't help him out. I didn't respond because, honestly, I felt like I had already explained myself, and I didn't think I owed him more justification. A week later, Emma came over to my apartment unannounced. I was working from home, and she started crying and accusing me of being cold and selfish. She said our parents were on her side and were upset I wasn't helping. She asked me why I would rather let her fiancé struggle than open my home. I repeated the same points, tried to explain how stressful living with someone unexpectedly would be for me, but she wouldn't hear it. She left, saying she was reconsidering our relationship if I continued being this unhelpful. After that, my parents called me. They were mostly understanding, but hinted that I should be flexible for family, and maybe let Tom stay a little while, especially since Emma was so stressed. I explained my position calmly, but my mom said I was being unreasonable. At this point, I felt attacked from all sides. I didn't want to lose my sister over this, but I also couldn't imagine giving up my space for someone I barely know, especially for an indefinite period. Emma has since started dropping subtle comments in family group chats and posting things on social media about how some people don't understand what family really means. My other friends have started asking if I've frozen her out because of this situation. Meanwhile, Tom is supposedly looking for a place, but Emma keeps hinting that it's difficult and that maybe I should just reconsider. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for prioritizing my home and mental health. I do feel bad about the stress I'm causing them, but I also think my boundaries are completely reasonable. I've offered help in other ways, researching short-term rentals, helping him move, etc., but apparently that's not enough. I try to have a conversation with Emma, where I express that my refusal doesn't mean I don't care about her or Tom, but she either doesn't listen or twists it into me being selfish. Part of me wonders if I really am being unreasonable, but another part of me thinks that everyone should respect boundaries. I'm not asking them not to visit. I'm just saying living here temporarily is not going to happen. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment for a couple of months, even though everyone says I'm being selfish and should help family. AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she ruined my wedding. I never thought I'd be the type to have family drama at my wedding, but here I am, questioning everything about my own family. This is going to be long, so I'll try to lay it all out clearly. A little context. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 24F. Growing up, we were close, but the closer we got to adulthood, the more competitive things became. Emily always had a way of making ordinary events about her, but I usually brush it off. I've been with my fiancé, Mark, 30M, for 6 years. We got engaged last year, and from the beginning, planning the wedding was a bit of a tightrope with my family, especially Emily. Fast forward to last month. I had planned a medium-sized wedding at a beautiful outdoor venue, mostly inviting close friends and family. I was really excited because I wanted a personal and intimate day. Emily had her own life plans, but I assumed she'd be happy to attend and support me. I was wrong. Emily has always had a flair for drama and attention. I think she secretly feels overshadowed by me, though we rarely talk about it. About 2 weeks before the wedding, she messaged me saying she felt excluded from the planning. I honestly didn't understand what she meant. I had asked her opinion on bridesmaid dresses, food options, and music, and she had given input. I tried to reassure her that her input mattered, but she started sending increasingly passive-aggressive messages, saying things like, "I guess it's fine if you don't want my real opinion, and I wouldn't want to ruin your vision." I tried to ignore it because I was busy and didn't want tension before my wedding. The day before the wedding, things escalated. Emily had been helping set up decorations, and I noticed that some of the things we had planned had been moved or replaced. I confronted her, and she admitted that she didn't like some of the decorations and wanted to make it more her style. I was frustrated but tried to stay calm, explaining that this wasn't about anyone's style. It was my wedding. She apologized, but gave me a look that told me she was still holding back resentment. I didn't think much more of it at the time. I wanted to avoid a full-blown argument before the wedding. Wedding day arrives. Everything is going perfectly until the reception. I noticed that some of the food stations were missing certain dishes, and our custom wedding cake had a huge smear on one side. I was told by the caterers that Emily had insisted on rearranging things at the last minute. At first, I thought it was just a miscommunication, but then things got worse. During my toast, Emily grabbed the microphone from Mark after he introduced me and gave her own speech. She went on for almost 10 minutes, making the story about her, talking about how she always felt left out and how my wedding wasn't really hers. Guests were uncomfortable, and I was humiliated. I tried to take the microphone back politely, but she ignored me. Mark was furious, but kept trying to calm me down. Later that evening, I found out that Emily had intentionally spilled red wine on my dress after the first dance, claiming later it was an accident because she wanted to feel included. My parents were shocked, guests were whispering, and I had to change into a backup dress for the remainder of the night. It was beyond mortifying. The next day, Emily sent me a long message apologizing, but it was full of excuses. "I didn't mean to ruin anything. I just wanted to be part of the day. You're always the center of attention, and I just wanted some love too. I was stressed and didn't know how else to express myself." She asked me to forgive her and said she would do anything to make it up. I've been struggling because on one hand, I love my sister, but on the other hand, this went far beyond a normal mistake. She intentionally sabotaged one of the most important days of my life. I told her I needed time, which she accepted, but she's been posting on social media that she feels unfairly shunned and that our family doesn't understand her struggles. Some family members have suggested I let it go for the sake of peace, but I honestly don't know how. I don't feel like I can trust her again, and I feel humiliated every time I think about that night. I've been debating whether to cut contact entirely, at least temporarily. Mark says I shouldn't let her behavior slide because it was a serious betrayal. My parents are divided. My dad thinks I'm being too harsh, while my mom says she can understand why I feel hurt. Emily keeps hinting that I should forgive her publicly or she'll feel worse about herself. So Reddit. AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she sabotaged my wedding. I love her, but the line between family love and personal boundaries feels completely crossed. I just don't know what the right thing to do is. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother attend my wedding after he humiliated me in front of my entire family. I, 28F, have been planning my wedding to my fiancé, Alex, 30M, for over a year now. From the beginning, I wanted the day to be small, but meaningful with close family and friends. I've always been close with my family, especially my younger brother, Matt, 24M. Growing up, Matt was a bit of a prankster, but nothing too serious. Over the years, though, his pranks and jokes have started to feel mean-spirited, and they've caused a lot of tension between us. About 6 months ago, I finally had everything booked and ready. Invitations were sent out, decorations were chosen, and the catering was finalized. I even picked out a seating arrangement that I thought would keep everyone comfortable. I was excited and, honestly, a bit nervous, but I thought everything was going well. That is, until Matt decided to make a little joke at my bridal shower. The bridal shower was at my parents' house, and I had invited a mix of family and friends. Matt showed up, as expected, but he brought along a surprise for everyone. When it was time for gifts, he handed me a small box and insisted I open it in front of everyone. I reluctantly did, thinking it was something cute or sentimental. Inside, there was a gag gift, a cheap toy of a coffin with a little figure of me inside it, and a note that said, "Marriage is the end." Everyone laughed, but I didn't. I asked him to stop and give me the real gift if he had one, but he just shrugged and walked away, saying I was too sensitive. I tried to brush it off at first, but it really bothered me. It wasn't just that it was a bad joke. It was that he humiliated me in front of all of my friends and family, many of whom had never seen me visibly upset. I talked to my parents about it, and they told me to let it go because Matt just likes to joke around. That didn't make me feel better. I felt disrespected and angry, but I tried to move on, hoping it wouldn't affect our wedding. Fast forward a couple of months, and we had our engagement photos scheduled. I asked Matt not to interfere or make jokes during the shoot. He promised he wouldn't. On the day of the photos, everything started off fine, but midway through, Matt showed up late, uninvited, and somehow got access to the location. He started taking photos of me and Alex in ridiculous poses without permission and posted some of them on social media, captioned "Bridezilla" in the wild. Friends started tagging me, and I was mortified. I immediately asked him to take them down, but he claimed he couldn't because they had already gone viral on his own social media. At this point, I was beyond frustrated. Alex was supportive, telling me that this was unacceptable and that we needed to set boundaries. I decided to have a serious talk with Matt. I told him that if he continued to humiliate me or cross boundaries, he would not be allowed to be part of my wedding. He didn't seem to take me seriously, laughing it off and saying, "It's your wedding, not my comedy show." I tried explaining that this wasn't about being sensitive. It was about respect and basic decency, especially on one of the most important days of my life. He told me I was overreacting and that I was ruining the fun for everyone. I felt hurt and disrespected, but I still hoped he would change. About a month ago, Matt's behavior escalated. He started messaging my friends, asking what they were wearing to the wedding, if there were any surprise plans, and hinting at pulling pranks. He even messaged Alex directly, saying, "Hope you're ready for some fun at the wedding. I don't do boring." I realized that he had no intention of stopping, and that if he was allowed to attend, he might embarrass me even more, possibly ruining the entire event. I brought this up with my parents, who told me it was too extreme to uninvite him. They said it would cause a family feud, and that Matt was part of the family, so he has to be included. I decided I had to make the decision myself. I sent Matt a message explaining that because of his repeated attempts to humiliate me and disrespect my boundaries, he would not be allowed at the wedding. I told him it wasn't personal against him as a person, but that his actions had consequences and I couldn't risk my special day being ruined. I offered to have a private celebration with him before or after the wedding if he wanted, just not at the actual ceremony or reception. His reaction was explosive. He called me a controlling brat and accused me of turning my whole family against him. He also messaged my parents and Alex's parents, trying to get them to intervene. My parents were furious with me, saying I was being unfair and that I should compromise. Alex's parents, however, were fully supportive, saying that no one has the right to make the bride feel unsafe or humiliated on her own wedding day. The family tension has been unbearable. My cousins and aunts are now pressuring me to invite him, saying it's just one day and that I should learn to laugh at yourself. My friends are supportive, but some have suggested that my approach might seem extreme. I feel torn because I do love my brother, but I can't allow him to disrespect me like this in front of everyone, especially on my wedding day. I'm genuinely worried he'll try something humiliating or even sabotage the wedding if he shows up. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother attend my wedding after repeated humiliations, despite my family's insistence that I shouldn't make him an enemy. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me, even though she claims she has no other options, and I'm the only family she can rely on. I, 28F, have lived independently since I graduated from college. I rent a small but comfortable apartment in a decent part of town, and I work full-time as a marketing analyst. I live alone, and I value my privacy and routine. I'm careful with my finances and like to plan ahead, so my apartment has become my sanctuary after years of shared living spaces in college and early adulthood. My sister, Emily, 30F, has always had a turbulent life. She has struggled with finances, job stability, and relationships for most of her adult life. She recently lost her apartment due to an eviction after falling behind on rent for several months. She has been calling and texting me nonstop, asking if she and her 2 children, ages 5 and 8, can move in with me temporarily until she gets back on her feet. She's been framing it as a short-term solution, maybe a couple of months, but I know from past experiences with her that temporary often turns into long-term arrangements that are very difficult to manage. I explained to her that my apartment is not suitable for 3 extra people. It's a 1-bedroom unit, and my living space doubles as my home office. I work from home most days, and having 2 kids running around plus a struggling adult would make it nearly impossible to maintain my routine. I also mentioned that I don't have the financial bandwidth to support her for an extended period, and even though I want to help, I can't jeopardize my own stability. I offered alternatives. I could help her look for affordable rentals, assist with childcare costs, or help her organize her finances to stabilize her situation. I also offered to watch the kids for a few hours so she could have time to manage her affairs. Emily reacted very negatively. She accused me of being selfish and uncaring, saying that I was turning my back on family in their time of need. She claims that I'm the only family she can rely on, that our parents are too busy or unwilling to help, and that I have a moral obligation to let her stay. She also insinuated that if I refused, our relationship would be permanently damaged, and she implied that other family members would side with her and see me as cruel. I tried to reason with her again, explaining that I have limits and that hosting her and the kids in my small space could create tension, stress, and resentment that would harm our relationship more than help it. I reminded her that I've helped her in smaller ways before, giving her money for groceries, babysitting for a few hours, but that taking in 3 people indefinitely is beyond what I can handle. I also expressed that my refusal is not about punishing her or not caring, but about protecting my own mental health and the home I've worked hard to maintain. Since then, the tension has escalated. She has been sending me long texts every day, guilt-tripping me about my refusal. She says I don't love my family and that I care more about comfort than people. She also started posting vague social media updates, implying that she's in a crisis and that some people in her family refuse to help, which has led to questions and judgment from other relatives. Our parents have tried to mediate, saying I should show compassion and that family should stick together, but I explained my boundaries calmly and they seemed disappointed. I've thought a lot about compromise. I considered maybe letting them stay for a weekend or a few nights here and there, but even that seems stressful and logistically complicated. I also offered to financially contribute toward a rental or storage unit, but she says that doesn't solve the immediate crisis she's experiencing. I feel like any concession I make will be interpreted as weakness or a willingness to let her take over my space permanently, which I'm not willing to risk. I love my sister and her kids, and I want to support them in ways that are sustainable. But I also feel like she's ignoring the reality of my living situation and trying to pressure me into a decision that benefits her but would harm my life. I worry that if I give in, it will damage my mental health, my professional life, and my relationship with my own home. I also worry that my refusal will permanently harm our relationship, which is something I value deeply. I've tried empathy, compromise, and offering practical support, but nothing seems to satisfy her. She insists that family always helps each other, and that I'm morally obligated to take her and the kids in. I feel like I'm being reasonable, setting healthy boundaries, and protecting my life and home, but I'm also facing intense guilt and family pressure. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her 2 kids move into my apartment, even though she claims she has no other options, and I'm the only family she can rely on. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for telling my brother his wedding plan was selfish and almost ruining the day. So, I, 28F, have a younger brother, Alex, 25M, who is getting married in a few months. Growing up, Alex has always been the golden child in my parents' eyes, and while our relationship has been mostly okay, I've always felt a little overlooked. That being said, I love him and I've always tried to support him. A few weeks ago, Alex and his fiancée, Claire, 26F, invited me over to discuss the wedding plans. I was excited because I wanted to be helpful. When I arrived, I noticed something immediately. The wedding plans seemed extremely exclusive. They're planning a small ceremony in a beautiful countryside estate, which is fine, but the way they were approaching it felt more like they were planning a private vacation than a wedding. They only wanted 20 guests, all immediate family, plus a handful of close friends, but the thing that bothered me most was who they included and who they didn't. They had already decided to invite their parents, siblings, and their fiancé's best friend group. That's when I realized they didn't plan to invite my husband, my in-laws, or even some of our mutual family friends who have been close to us for years. When I asked why, Claire explained that the venue had a strict limit and they wanted it to be intimate. I understood space is limited, but it felt like they were trying to exclude people deliberately. I gently pointed out that their intimate plan was already alienating half the people who actually cared about them, and that it felt selfish to only invite people they personally liked while disregarding family obligations. Alex immediately got defensive. He said, "It's our wedding. We can invite whoever we want. We're not putting on a show for anyone." I told him I wasn't trying to police his guest list, but I thought that completely ignoring family, especially on both sides, was going to cause hurt feelings. Claire then jumped in and said that I was overreacting and that this was a special day for them, not for anyone else. At that moment, I felt frustrated. I told them both that while I understood wanting a small wedding, completely excluding people who matter to both families was inconsiderate. Alex started raising his voice, saying I was trying to control their wedding and that I didn't understand. I told him I wasn't trying to control it, but I refused to be part of a wedding that felt so exclusionary and cold. The conversation ended with Claire storming off and Alex giving me a long glare before saying, "Maybe you shouldn't come at all if you're going to act like this." A few days later, our parents called me. They said Alex had told them about our argument and was very upset, claiming I ruined the mood for him and that I was being dramatic. My mom seemed conflicted, but my dad called me to say he agreed with me, though he told me to tread lightly because Alex was very sensitive. I felt stuck because I didn't want to cause family drama, but I also didn't want to lie to myself about how I felt. Fast forward to last weekend, the engagement party. The tension was palpable. Alex barely talked to me, and Claire avoided me entirely. During the speeches, one of Alex's friends made a comment about keeping the circle tight and avoiding family nonsense, which was obviously a jab at the situation. I could see my mom's face fall, and even my dad looked uncomfortable. Later, Alex cornered me in the kitchen and said, "You need to stop acting like this is about anyone but you. Everyone else is fine with it. Stop causing drama." I told him calmly that I wasn't trying to ruin anything, but I was worried that his decisions were hurting people who cared about him. He said I was overstepping and walked away. Now, the weirdest part. Some of Claire's friends started whispering to me that they thought Alex was being unreasonable, but others said I was being judgmental and that I needed to respect the couple's choices. I honestly feel torn. On one hand, I know it's their wedding and they can technically invite whoever they want. On the other hand, it feels like they're prioritizing a very selective guest list over family feelings, and it's hard for me to watch. I haven't been officially disinvited, but there's a very cold distance whenever we're in the same room. Alex hasn't spoken to me since the engagement party, and I'm getting mixed messages from our family. My parents think I have a point, but don't want me to confront Alex directly, while my cousins are quietly taking sides. Some friends even suggested I consider skipping the wedding to avoid escalating things. I feel guilty because I love Alex and I want him to have a great day, but I also feel like staying silent about something that hurtful isn't right. I worry that no matter what I do, either I'm going to be seen as controlling or I'll end up resenting them for making me feel like my family doesn't matter. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for telling my brother that his wedding plan was selfish and inconsiderate? I honestly tried to approach it diplomatically, but it ended up turning into a huge argument, and now our relationship feels strained. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's dream wedding because of my husband's illness? So I, 34F, am in a bit of a situation that has blown up way more than I ever imagined. My sister, Claire, 30F, is getting married in about a month, and it's been the event of the year in our family for months. She's always been very particular and, honestly, a little controlling when it comes to her vision of things. I have tried to respect that because it's her day, and I wanted to be supportive. Here's the thing. My husband, Mark, 36M, has been dealing with a chronic autoimmune condition for a few years now. It's manageable, but flare-ups are unpredictable and often severe, requiring rest and sometimes even urgent medical attention. It has made traveling and attending long, high-stress events very difficult. I know some people might think it's just an event and that he should tough it out, but this isn't like a cold or a minor illness. It's serious, and pushing him too hard can result in weeks of recovery, including hospitalization. Claire's wedding is out of state, in a location that requires a long flight and multiple days of being on her schedule, which includes rehearsal dinners, hair and makeup appointments, family photos, and multiple events spread across 4 days. Basically, it's a marathon, and Mark simply cannot handle that kind of stress right now. I tried to explain this to Claire months ago when the invitation came, saying that we might not be able to attend the wedding itself if Mark is having a flare-up, but that we would love to celebrate with her however we could locally or virtually. She nodded and seemed to understand, saying she appreciated our honesty. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago, Claire started sending increasingly insistent messages, asking me to guarantee that Mark would be there. She kept reminding me that this was her dream wedding, that everyone else was coming, and that she needed her closest family by her side. I explained again that I couldn't guarantee anything because of Mark's condition, and I offered alternatives like attending virtually or sending a personal video message for the ceremony. She went off on me. She accused me of choosing him over family, of being selfish, and of not caring about her feelings. She even said she'd never forgive me if we didn't attend. My parents got involved too, though they were more on my side, trying to help mediate. They suggested that we could attend only the main ceremony and leave immediately afterward, but even that would be pushing Mark to his limits, as it involves a long flight and hours of standing and walking. I finally told Claire, very calmly, that while I love her and want to support her, I cannot put Mark's health at risk. I said that we could celebrate together before the wedding locally, or I could be part of the ceremony virtually, but we would not be flying across the country for a multi-day event under these circumstances. That's when things escalated. Claire stopped talking to me and has been posting on social media about family who doesn't care, clearly alluding to me. She has also told mutual friends that I'm making excuses to avoid her wedding, which is not true. Some of our friends reached out to ask if I'm really going, which put me in an uncomfortable position of having to defend myself over and over again. My parents have been supportive, but are worried about the family fallout. My mother said I need to suck it up for family harmony, and my father is just frustrated with the situation. I feel terrible that Claire is upset, but I also feel that my husband's health has to come first. It's not like he's refusing to go out of laziness. He genuinely cannot handle it. I did try everything, offering to participate virtually, offering to host a local pre-wedding celebration, even suggesting that we could come for just a day and fly back, but nothing seems to be enough. Claire has made it very clear that if Mark and I don't show up in person for all events, she considers it a betrayal. Now, I'm worried that this is going to permanently damage my relationship with my sister and possibly with other family members who are starting to take sides. I've considered just going and dealing with the fallout after, but I'm also terrified of the potential health consequences for Mark, which could be serious. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if I'm justified in putting Mark's health first. On one hand, I feel terrible that my sister's dream wedding is being affected by our inability to attend. On the other hand, it's not like this is a trivial matter. Attending could be a real risk for Mark. I also feel like I've tried to compromise as much as possible, but nothing seems to be acceptable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of my husband's health, even though she's making it seem like the end of the world. Character count, 6,214 if you want. I can also create a second story with a twist ending that could really go viral on Reddit. It would be long, dramatic, and emotionally charged. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding because he insists I owe him, even though I can't afford it. I, 30F, come from a family that has always had a lot of tension when it comes to money and expectations. My younger brother, Alex, 27M, has always been the golden child in the eyes of our parents, while I've been more independent and careful with finances. I have a stable job as a graphic designer, but I also have student loans, rent, and living expenses that I manage carefully. I'm not rich by any means, and I've worked hard to be financially responsible. Recently, Alex got engaged to his girlfriend, Clara, 28F. They're planning a large wedding next summer. From the start, Alex has had very high expectations for the wedding, including a destination venue, expensive catering, and a big guest list. Early on, he casually mentioned that he was counting on me to contribute to the wedding because, as his older sister, I owe it to him for all the times he helped me growing up. I was taken aback. Alex and I have always had a cordial relationship, but I've never considered myself financially obligated to him in any way. I explained to him that while I wanted to support him in non-financial ways, helping plan, attending events, helping with decorations, or RSVPs, I simply couldn't afford to contribute a large sum of money. I offered to help in practical ways that didn't cost money, such as designing invitations, helping coordinate vendors, and organizing some pre-wedding events. Alex got defensive immediately, saying that he expected a monetary contribution and that my refusal was disrespectful and shocking given our history. When I told our parents about the conversation, they were divided. My mom said I should contribute at least something, even if it was a small amount, because family supports each other, while my dad agreed with me that contributions should be voluntary and within one's means. Alex then started pressuring me repeatedly, sending me messages like, "Come on, you can spare $5,000, it's not that much, and if you really cared about me, you'd help make my wedding the dream I deserve." He framed my refusal as a moral failing rather than a financial boundary. Things escalated when Alex announced that he had booked the venue and several vendors and said that my share needed to be paid immediately. I reiterated that I could not contribute money, but I offered to help in other ways. He accused me of being cheap and unsupportive and implied that Clara would think less of me as well. At this point, I started getting anxious about family events. I was worried about confrontations during wedding planning and about being publicly shamed for not meeting expectations I never agreed to. To try to reach a compromise, I suggested covering a small, specific expense I could afford, like contributing to flowers or printing invitations. Alex rejected this and said that it was not enough and that it wouldn't count as a proper contribution. He kept repeating that I owe him and that it's family tradition for siblings to contribute to major life events. I tried to explain that my financial situation is completely different from his, and that expecting a contribution of thousands of dollars from me is unrealistic. I also reminded him that I've supported him emotionally over the years, but that he cannot equate familial support with financial obligation. The situation has now divided our family. My parents are trying to mediate, but Alex has told multiple relatives that I'm being selfish and unsupportive. Some relatives have reached out to me privately, agreeing with me that financial support should be voluntary, while others have hinted that I should just do my part to keep peace. I'm feeling a lot of guilt because Alex insists that my refusal makes me a bad sister, and some family members are subtly reinforcing that narrative. I've tried everything: compromise, offering non-monetary support, setting clear boundaries, and explaining my financial reality. Alex refuses to listen and has framed the entire situation as if I am deliberately trying to ruin his wedding. I feel like I'm being reasonable and responsible by not putting myself in financial jeopardy, but the emotional pressure from him and some family members is overwhelming. I love my brother and want his wedding to be a happy occasion, but I also cannot compromise my financial stability for an event that he wants to be extravagant. I've tried to communicate my support in ways that are meaningful but don't involve money, yet it seems like nothing I do satisfies him. I'm worried that if I give in, it will set a precedent for future demands, and that I'll be resented if I ever have financial limitations in the future. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding even though he insists I owe him, and claims families should always financially support each other. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a major fallout over her fiancé. I, 28F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. My younger sister, Emma, 25F, is bubbly and spontaneous, often acting first and thinking later. Growing up, this sometimes caused tension, but I always tried to be supportive. Our parents, who are divorced, have always treated us equally, but have their favorites in subtle ways. Lately, though, family dynamics have become more complicated, and I'm starting to question whether my stance makes me the asshole. Emma got engaged about 6 months ago. Her fiancé, Daniel, 27M, is charming on the surface, but I've had concerns since the beginning. I met him for the first time at their engagement party. My initial impression was that he was a bit overbearing, always trying to be the center of attention and subtly criticizing my life choices, which he seemed to consider less ambitious than his. I shrugged it off because I didn't want to seem judgmental. Fast forward a few months, I started noticing little things. At family dinners, he would interrupt me constantly, dismissing my job and my hobbies. He would make jokes that felt more like digs at my intelligence or independence. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking I was being sensitive. But things escalated during Emma's bachelorette party. Daniel wasn't invited, but he started texting her nonstop, insisting she respond immediately. When she jokingly mentioned it in front of me, I said, "Honestly, that's controlling. You should set boundaries." Emma laughed it off, but I could tell it rubbed her the wrong way. The real fallout happened about 2 months ago. Emma invited me to a brunch at her apartment with her closest friends. I was excited because we rarely get time alone. Daniel showed up uninvited. I was annoyed but stayed calm. During brunch, he started criticizing the way I handle my career, saying things like, "You could be making so much more if you just applied yourself differently," and implying my financial independence was unimpressive. I snapped. I told him to stop being condescending and that his comments were inappropriate. He laughed it off, saying I was overreacting and that I didn't have a sense of humor. Emma, who had been listening quietly, finally intervened. Instead of backing me up, she told me I was being dramatic and that Daniel didn't mean it like that. I left immediately, upset. That night, Emma texted me a long message explaining that she loves Daniel. He's a good person, and I should let go of my petty judgments. I tried responding calmly, explaining that it wasn't petty and that I was concerned about the way he treats the people around him. She didn't reply. Since then, tensions have escalated. Whenever family gatherings come up, I've been more distant, and Emma has started posting subtle digs about me on social media, implying I'm jealous or too controlling about her happiness. My parents have been caught in the middle, urging me to just forgive and attend the wedding. I try to reason with them, explaining that attending would feel disingenuous when I am not comfortable being around Daniel. They say I'm overreacting, that he's her choice, and I have to respect it. A week ago, Emma formally invited me to the wedding. She included a note saying, "I really hope you'll be there. It won't feel right without my sister beside me on my big day." I honestly want to be there for her, but the idea of sitting through an entire ceremony and reception while being in the same room as Daniel feels unbearable. I worry I might snap again or say something I regret. I explained my feelings to Emma, saying I didn't feel comfortable attending because of past incidents and how Daniel treats me. She responded angrily, accusing me of trying to ruin her wedding and implying I'm selfish. My parents are disappointed, saying I should put aside my feelings for one day for family. Even some mutual friends have reached out, suggesting I'm being dramatic and that family obligations sometimes outweigh personal grievances. I don't want to be the villain here. I love my sister, and I genuinely wish her happiness. But I also feel like I can't support someone who has consistently disrespected me and belittled my choices. I've considered attending the ceremony, but staying for a short time and leaving before the reception, but that feels like a compromise that still might not prevent conflict. So here I am, genuinely torn. AITA for potentially refusing to attend my sister's wedding over her fiancé's behavior, even though it will hurt her and disappoint my parents? Or is it reasonable to prioritize my own boundaries and emotional well-being? I'm bracing for backlash either way because family dynamics are messy, but I want an honest take. Character count, 6452. AITA for refusing to host my brother's wedding at my house, even though he insisted it would save money for everyone. I, 32F, have a brother, Mark, 30M, who has always been a bit intense about things being done his way. Our parents passed away a few years ago, so the two of us are each other's closest family. I've always tried to maintain a healthy boundary with him, but it's tricky because he tends to guilt trip easily. So here's the situation. Mark got engaged last year to his girlfriend, Emma, 28F, and from the start, he was determined to have their wedding on a shoestring. Now, I'm all for saving money, and I've had friends and coworkers have very simple, intimate weddings, which are perfectly fine. But Mark's version of simple seemed more like completely free for us, but make someone else do all the work. A few months ago, he approached me with a proposal. He wanted to host the wedding at my house. I live in a modest but not tiny 3-bedroom house in a suburban neighborhood. I have a small backyard, nothing extravagant, but it's sufficient for gatherings of maybe 20 to 25 people. Mark's guest list was about 120 people, with no limit on plus ones. He told me he had done the math and that if we hosted the wedding at my house, they could save thousands on venue fees and I would be helping the family. He said, "It's perfect. You have a big backyard, you can handle the decoration, and it will be so much more personal." I was shocked. First of all, my house is not equipped to host 120 people. My backyard is uneven, the driveway is narrow, and my house has a very small kitchen that cannot support catering at that scale. I tried to explain this calmly. I told him the logistics would be a nightmare, the noise would bother the neighbors, and I couldn't take responsibility for liability if something went wrong. I suggested alternative solutions like renting a hall, using a local park, or even holding a smaller, intimate ceremony at my home for family only. Mark refused to hear it. He said I was being unreasonable, that if I loved my family, I would make it work. He reminded me that our parents had dreamed of seeing the whole family together at a wedding and implied that refusing would be disrespectful to them. He also said Emma agreed that my house would be quaint and charming for the ceremony and insisted that I would enjoy it. I tried to set boundaries. I said no multiple times, but he started messaging me daily, sending links to DIY decoration ideas, cheap catering options, and even a layout plan for where tables and chairs could go in my backyard. When I didn't respond immediately, he called me, sometimes several times a day. I finally sent a message saying, "I am not hosting your wedding. I've explained why. Please stop asking." That's when things escalated. Mark sent me a long message saying I was selfish, that I was letting my fear of responsibility ruin a beautiful family moment, and that I was making Emma cry by not supporting their dream. He also mentioned that I was capable of more than I think, and accused me of being unwilling to step up for the family. I didn't respond further. A week later, my house was the topic of conversation at a family dinner with some relatives I hadn't seen in months. Mark framed it as if I had turned down hosting because I was being petty and didn't care about family traditions. I tried to explain my side, emphasizing safety, space, and practicality, but it felt like no one really heard me. Now, a few months later, Mark is still upset. He booked a venue elsewhere, but he refuses to speak to me directly. Whenever I bring it up, he either ignores me or makes a passive-aggressive comment about how quaint venues can be. Emma has also started texting me, apparently feeling caught in the middle. She has been polite, but she keeps mentioning how she wishes I could have helped because she thought it would be a fun family project. I feel torn. On one hand, I want to support my brother and his fiancée, but on the other hand, I have boundaries and I genuinely don't want the stress, liability, and chaos of trying to host 120 people in a house that can't handle it. I also feel guilty that our parents aren't here to see a wedding, and somehow I feel blamed for not making it happen the way they would have wanted. Some friends have told me I'm NTA because it's unreasonable to expect someone to host such a large event in their home. Others say I should have at least helped more with planning or been more flexible. I've offered to help in smaller ways, like helping with invitations, DIY decorations, or even assisting on the day of the wedding. But Mark seems to interpret anything short of host the whole wedding as rejection. I just don't know. Am I the asshole for standing firm and saying no to hosting my brother's wedding in my house, even though he insists it would save money and be special? Or am I being unreasonable by refusing to contribute in the way he envisioned? I genuinely try to compromise and suggest alternatives, but the more I say no, the more he frames me as the villain in this story. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's kids stay at my house after she moved in with her boyfriend? This is going to be long, so buckle up. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, Jake, 34M, for 8 years. We live in a fairly modest 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. Jake has a younger sister, Lily, 28F, who I have always been close with. Our families have always been involved in each other's lives, and Lily has 2 kids, ages 6 and 3. Earlier this year, Lily went through a messy breakup with her ex, who was, for lack of a better word, emotionally manipulative and unreliable. After the split, she started dating someone new. Let's call him Mark, 30M. Lily's plan was always that her kids would spend weekends with her and their father until things were more settled. For the most part, everyone seemed fine with this arrangement. About 2 months ago, Lily and Mark decided to move in together. What she didn't tell anyone at the time was that Mark's lease was on the smaller side and that he had strict rules about pets and extra people. Lily came to us, explaining that she couldn't move in with the kids yet because of Mark's restrictions. She asked if the kids could stay at our apartment temporarily while she and Mark got settled. Now, here's the catch. Our apartment is a 2-bedroom, with one of those rooms being the office/guest room, which isn't set up for long-term stays. Our own daughter, Emma, 5, has her own room, and we had some toys and a routine set up. Lily asked if the kids could stay for a couple of weeks at first. I said okay for a few days maybe, but weeks sounded tricky. Jake said he felt bad, and after a bit of back and forth, we agreed to a week. The first week went fine. Lily's kids are well-behaved, mostly, and Emma seemed excited to have cousins around. The problem started when Lily called after the week was over. She explained that Mark was being picky about moving and dates, and she needed the kids to stay just a little longer, maybe another week or 2. We agreed reluctantly because, again, she was family and in a tough spot. Then things started piling up. Laundry multiplied exponentially. Our living room became a chaotic playground. I don't mind a bit of mess, but my anxiety spikes when our apartment feels out of control, and I noticed Emma becoming clingy and irritable because her space was being invaded constantly. Cleaning up after 4 kids, our daughter plus Lily's 2, was exhausting, and I had to juggle work from home at the same time. After the 3rd week, I started feeling resentful. I called Lily and told her that we couldn't host the kids any longer. I tried to explain gently that our apartment wasn't meant for long-term stays, that Emma was struggling, and that I needed our routine back. Lily got upset, saying I was being selfish and unsupportive, and accused me of not caring about her situation. She even hinted that Jake should side with her because he's her brother. Jake told me he understood both sides, but that he didn't want to anger his sister. He suggested we give it a few more days while Lily tried to sort things out. I reluctantly agreed, thinking we could manage a short extension. That was a mistake. Within 3 days, Lily and Mark were arguing constantly over the phone. One night, Lily called me 11 p.m. in tears, saying she and Mark were fighting and she couldn't handle the kids overnight. She asked if they could stay another night. I told her no, and she burst into anger, saying I was treating her like she was a burden. At this point, I had a breakdown. I had been working 10-hour days, cleaning constantly, trying to keep Emma's routines, and simultaneously trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy in our lives. I told Jake that we needed to draw a hard line. The next day, I drafted a message to Lily, explaining calmly that we couldn't host her children anymore. I offered to help find a daycare or babysitter temporarily or help her talk to her ex to arrange custody exchanges, but I made it clear that having them here was not an option. The reaction was worse than I expected. Lily texted everyone in our family, accusing me of being cruel, heartless, and manipulative. Some relatives called to ask what was going on. A few friends reached out saying they understood, but the family side started putting pressure on Jake, saying he needed to stand up to me and let the kids stay. Jake is trying to stay neutral, but I can see him stressed because he doesn't want to hurt his sister, and I don't want to burn bridges either. Since then, Lily hasn't spoken to me directly. She keeps texting Jake updates about the kids and complains about how unfair we were being. I feel guilty at times because they're family, but at the same time, I feel like I've been completely drained and that boundaries are being ignored. I'm worried that if I give in now, it will set a precedent where she can drop her kids on us whenever she feels overwhelmed. I know we could have handled the situation better, but I also feel like we were already clear about our limitations. Our daughter's needs and our own mental health have to come first, and I can't sacrifice them indefinitely. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's kids stay at my place after she moved in with her boyfriend. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insisted on bringing her dog despite my severe allergies. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 27F. We grew up close, but as adults, our lives have diverged significantly. I live in a small city apartment and have serious allergies to dogs. I mean severe, just being in the same room as one can send me into an asthma attack that sometimes requires an inhaler and on bad days, even an ER visit. Because of this, I've never owned a dog, and I've made it very clear to friends and family that dogs are not allowed in my home. Emily, on the other hand, has always been an animal person. She has 2 dogs, a golden retriever and a French bulldog. She's always been sensitive about them, and I've tried my best to navigate this without hurting her feelings. Over the years, I've avoided dog-related social events and even left family gatherings early if her dogs were present. She's made comments over time that sometimes stung, implying that I was being dramatic or selfish, but I just tried to ignore it because the alternative is me having serious health issues. Fast forward to this year, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Alex, 30M. The wedding planning has been complicated, but mostly on the fun side, choosing dresses, venues, catering, etc. She recently asked me if I would host the rehearsal dinner and small family brunch the day after the wedding at my apartment. My apartment is not huge, but it can comfortably accommodate 15 to 20 people for dinner, and I'm happy to cook and organize it because I love doing things for my family. The problem started when Emily told me that she really wanted to bring her golden retriever, Max, to the rehearsal dinner. I immediately told her that I couldn't have him in my apartment because of my severe allergies. I explained that it wasn't a preference or a joke. It's a medical issue, and even one dog in my space could trigger a serious reaction. I suggested alternatives. Maybe she could leave Max at a nearby pet-friendly hotel, or I could come to her place for a small gathering, or we could rent a small dog-friendly event space. Emily blew up. She accused me of being unreasonable and said that she can't imagine celebrating one of the most important moments of her life without Max by her side. She insisted that I was being selfish and controlling, saying that my apartment was supposed to be family space and that it should be welcoming to everyone, including her dogs. I tried again to calmly explain that this wasn't about selfishness. It was about my health and safety. The situation escalated quickly. Emily started bringing up past incidents where she claimed I was hard to please and implied that I was always prioritizing my comfort over the family. She brought Alex into it, and at first he was neutral, but eventually he started suggesting that maybe I could just try to tolerate Max for a couple of hours. I refused. I'm not someone who can just try to tolerate a life-threatening asthma trigger. I also reminded them that Max is very excitable and unpredictable around new people, which could also create a safety hazard for my other guests. Things got worse when Emily called our parents. They live out of state, but have always leaned toward keeping the peace and not making waves. They suggested that I try harder to accommodate Emily and Max, even offering to pay for a cleaning service or extra allergy medications. I felt cornered. I love my family, but my health cannot be compromised for a wedding dinner, no matter how important it is. I finally told Emily that I would love to be involved in hosting celebrations, but under no circumstances could her dog be in my apartment. I offered to host an alternative location if that made her happy. She responded by sending me a series of texts calling me selfish, heartless, and impossible, and said that if Max couldn't be there, she would just make other arrangements entirely, and that I was choosing to be left out of her life. Since then, I've been avoiding family calls and group chats because I'm afraid any conversation will escalate further. Other family members have started to take sides. Some think I should just deal with it for the sake of family, while others have told me I'm right to protect my health. Emily has not spoken directly to me in person for over a week and seems to be resentful. I feel like I'm being reasonable, but I also feel guilty because my refusal has caused such a huge rift. I do not want to host the wedding-related events if it means putting myself at risk. But now I'm worried that Emily might not invite me to other parts of her wedding celebrations, and the thought of being completely cut off from this milestone in her life is heartbreaking. AITA for refusing to allow my sister to bring her dog to my apartment for her wedding celebrations, even though she says it's an essential part of her life and her wedding experience. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with us before the wedding. I, 28F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I moved in here a couple of years ago with my now husband, Matt, 30M, and our lives have been relatively routine. My sister, Emily, 26F, recently got engaged to her boyfriend, James, 27M. For context, Emily and I have always had a tense but manageable relationship. She's very controlling, likes to micromanage situations, and often oversteps boundaries. But I've learned to coexist because family matters. The issue started when Emily called me last month, practically begging me to let her fiancé, James, move into our apartment for a few weeks. Their reasoning was that they were having some major plumbing issues in their apartment, and James's landlord was refusing to fix it immediately. Emily painted it as a temporary crisis, insisting it would only be for a few weeks and that it would help them out immensely. She kept emphasizing how stressful it was for James to have to sleep on an air mattress in their flooded living room, and she said that if I refused, she'd have nowhere else to turn. I was immediately hesitant. Our apartment is not huge, and having a third adult in the space would completely disrupt our routines. Matt and I both work from home, and I was concerned about privacy, boundaries, and, frankly, the general chaos of having someone else living with us. I told Emily that I needed to think about it, and I expressed my concerns. We don't have a spare bedroom set up for a guest long-term, our schedule is tight, and having James move in could be uncomfortable for everyone. Emily didn't take my hesitation well. She started guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "I thought you cared about family and Matt's fine with it, right?" Which I found manipulative. Matt was actually neutral and hadn't expressed an opinion yet because I hadn't asked him. She insisted that I was being selfish and that a family should always help each other in times of need. After a few days of back-and-forth texts and calls, I finally told her firmly that we could host them for one night if absolutely necessary. But having James move in for multiple weeks was not possible. She flipped. Emily accused me of being cruel, unsupportive, and jealous, suggesting that maybe I was trying to sabotage their relationship. James got involved too, sending me a few messages thanking me for even considering it, but also hinting that family should stick together. Things escalated quickly. Emily started showing up at our apartment unannounced, asking if she could drop James off just to see if it works. I told her explicitly that she could not do that. Matt and I both agreed that our home is our sanctuary, and we are not obligated to host anyone, even family. Emily responded by calling my behavior petty and selfish and told our parents about the situation. Our parents have always leaned slightly towards Emily in family conflicts, so when they found out, they called me repeatedly. They told me I needed to compromise for family unity and that it would be just a temporary inconvenience. They also brought up that Matt and I were not married long and should learn to put others before ourselves. I tried explaining that hosting a stranger for weeks would be a real disruption to our work, privacy, and mental health, but they kept insisting I was overreacting. The situation got worse when Emily started posting vague stories on social media about how cruel her sister was, which, unsurprisingly, prompted friends and distant relatives to ask me if it was true. I didn't engage, but the pressure was mounting. I even considered offering to help them find a short-term rental, but Emily rejected that idea, claiming it wouldn't be as good as staying with family. After 2 weeks of emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, and constant pressure, Matt and I had a serious conversation. We realized that if we gave in, it would set a precedent where Emily and James could expect to intrude on our life whenever they had minor inconveniences. We also realized that our mental health and personal boundaries were at stake. We decided to stick to our decision and communicated it clearly to Emily. James cannot move in with us. Period. Emily exploded. She accused me of being heartless, saying that I was making her wedding preparations impossibly stressful and that I didn't care about her or our family. James also sent a passive-aggressive message saying that he would find other options, but implied that our refusal was cold and unkind. Since then, Emily has barely spoken to me, and our parents are annoyed with me. Matt has been incredibly supportive, but I feel like a villain in this story. I don't feel guilty about maintaining my boundaries, but the constant pressure, guilt-tripping, and family drama have made me second-guess myself. I've tried explaining that my refusal isn't a personal attack and that I am happy to help in other ways, but nothing seems to satisfy Emily. I'm starting to wonder if I really am being selfish and if I should just give in to keep the peace. However, the idea of having a non-family member living in our apartment for weeks, completely appending our life, feels unreasonable. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with us before their wedding? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.